Hello, y'all. We are back. So, we are reading the book of Acts, and today we are in chapter 23. I know we have been in this chapter, or in the book of Acts for some time. We only have 5 chapters left. Oh my gosh. So, we are in chapter number 23, and Paul told us that this was in chapter 21, Paul said, "This is the last time y'all are going to see me. I'm about to die." They wept and cried. Chapter 22, they had also, chapter 20, he said, "I'm about to die." Chapter 22, and hey everybody, welcome in. We've been reading through the book of Acts, so we are getting towards the end. I'm catching y'all up a little bit. Chapter 22, he goes and starts preaching. Even though his friends told him, "Don't go, you're going to die up there, don't go." He goes anyway, and they bound him up. And the thing about it is that he is a Jew. He was born a Jew. He's been preaching to everybody as a Jew, but he saw Jesus. And so now he's telling them, actually, guys, like I was born just like you all. I was worshiping the Lord just like you all, but I had this encounter with Jesus, and I can't not tell y'all about it. Like, this Jesus that we've been looking for is the Messiah. He's the one we've been looking for. So keeps telling people about it. In chapter 22, they start beating him up. They listen to his testimony, but then as soon as he says that Jesus told him to go and preach to the Gentiles, all of a sudden they're like, "Man, this guy's full of it." And they literally say in the Bible, "Wipe this man off the face of the earth." So just because he decides to preach to more than just the Jews, now he's worthless. They want to kill him. So we're in chapter 23, and we're trying to find out what happened. So in chapter 23, and I have to read a little bit of chapter 22, verse 30 to go into chapter 23. So I'm just going to read it, and we're going to commentate like we always do. And we're almost done, y'all. I can't believe it. So the next day, since he wanted to find out exactly why Paul was being accused by the Jews, he released him. That's the guy in charge. He's trying to find out, why are these Jews coming after you? So he released him and instructed the chief priests and all the Sanhedrin to convene. He brought Paul down and placed him before them. Paul looked straight at the Sanhedrin and said, "Brothers, I have lived my life before God in all good conscience to this day." The high priest Ananias ordered those who were standing next to him to strike him on the mouth. Then Paul said to him, "God is going to strike you and you whitewashed wall." Okay. I'm gonna start calling some people some whitewashed walls. Anyway, if we're looking for a new way to talk about somebody, God is gonna strike you, you whitewashed wall. You are y'all know I'll be enjoying reading the Bible. Okay, then he says, "You are sitting there judging me according to the law, and yet in violation of the law, are you ordering me to be struck?" Ain't that wrong? People trying to convict you about something that they're clearly doing themselves. That ain't right. Those standing nearby said, "Do you dare reveal God's high priest?" "I did not know." And then this is Paul saying, "I did not know, brothers, that he was the high priest," replied Paul. "For it is written, you must not speak evil of a ruler of your people." When Paul realized that one part of them were Sadducees and the other part were Pharisees, he cried out in the Sanhedrin, "Brothers, I am a Pharisee, a son of Pharisees. I am being judged because of the hope of the resurrection of the dead." When he said this, a dispute broke out between the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and the assembly was divided. For the Sadducees say there is no resurrection, and neither angel nor spirit, but the Pharisees affirm them all. The shouting grew loud, and some of the scribes of the Pharisees' party got up and argued vehemently. "We find nothing evil in this man. What if a spirit or an angel has spoken to him?" When the dispute became violent, the commander feared that Paul might be torn apart by them and ordered the troops to go down, take him away from them, and bring him into the barracks. The following night, the Lord stood by him and said, Have courage, for as you have testified about me in Jerusalem, so it is necessary for you to testify in Rome. Like, isn't that a beautiful picture? So Paul wasn't with the 12 disciples when Jesus was alive. Paul saw Jesus after he died. He saw the light, and he saw, and he called out like, okay, Lord, who is this? And at the time, he didn't even believe that it was really Jesus, because he had been convicting people about Jesus. So it's interesting that Paul never saw Jesus in person while he was alive. Yet, while he is following the Lord and actually preaching about God and preaching about Jesus, it says that the Lord stood by him. So even though for us, even though we were not there when Jesus was born, we still can have interactions with the Lord even now after he's gone. And I say that because we saw that the Lord was with Paul even in this situation. So the plot against Paul. When it was morning, the Jews formed a conspiracy and bound themselves under a curse not to eat or drink until they had killed Paul. There were more than 40 who had formed this plot. These men went to the chief priests and elders and said, "We have bound ourselves under a solemn curse that we won't eat anything until we have killed Paul." Again, they're up here trying to do what's right, but at the same time asking for someone else to be killed. "We have bound ourselves under a solemn curse that we won't eat anything until we have killed Paul. So now you, along with the Sanhedrin, make a request to the commander that he bring him down to you as if you were going to investigate his case more thoroughly. But before he gets near, we are ready to kill him." People be plotting, just plotting. We're not going to do what's right, but we're trying to get this plot to kill him. So you tell them this, and on his way, we like, what? There's a verse that says that before you actually sin, you conspire in your mind and your heart. Like you kind of thought about it and got this whole thing planned before it happens. And we're seeing that even here with them. Like they've got this whole plan in mind before the actual sin of trying to kill him. But even the thought itself that they're trying to kill this guy is bad. So, but the son of Paul's sister, hearing about their ambush, came and entered the barracks and reported it to Paul. Isn't that kind of cool? The son of Paul's sister. So that's Paul's nephew. Rarely do we think about the fact that Paul had other family. He has a brother and a sister. He has nephew here. So there's a whole family associated with this person. But oftentimes we don't think about that. We just think about him. So that's really interesting. But the son of Paul's sister, that's his nephew, hearing about their ambush, came and entered the barracks and reported it to Paul. Paul called one of the centurions and said, "Take this young man to the commander because he has something to report to him." So he took him, brought him to the commander and said, the prisoner Paul called me and asked me to bring this young man to you because he has something to tell you." The commander took him by the hand, led him aside, and inquired privately, "What is it you have to report to me?" "The Jews," he said, "have agreed to ask you to bring Paul down to the Sanhedrin tomorrow as though they're going to hold a somewhat more careful inquiry about him. Don't let them persuade you, because there are more than 40 of them lying in ambush, men who had bound themselves under a curse not to eat or drink until they have killed him. Now they are ready, waiting for your consent." So the commander dismissed the young man and instructed him, "Don't tell anyone that you have informed me about this." Verse 23. He summoned 2 of his centurions and said, "Get 200 soldiers ready with 70 cavalry and 200 spearmen to go to Caesarea at 9 tonight. Also provide mounts for Paul to ride and bring him safely to Felix the governor." He wrote the following letter: "Claudius Lysias, to the most excellent governor Felix, greetings. When this man had been seized by the Jews and was about to be killed by them, I arrived with my troops and rescued him because I learned that he is a Roman citizen. Wanting to know the charge they were accusing him of, I brought him down before their Sanhedrin. I found out that the accusations were concerning questions of their law, and that there was no charge that merited death or imprisonment. When I was informed that there was a plot against the man, I sent him to you right away. I also ordered his accusers to state their case against him in their presence. So the soldiers took Paul during the night and brought him to Antipatris, as they were ordered. The next day they returned to the barracks, allowing the cavalry to go on with him. When these men entered Caesarea and delivered the letter to the governor, they also presented Paul to him. After he read it, he asked what province he was from. When he learned he was from Sicilia, he said, "I will give you a hearing whenever your accusers also get here." He ordered that he be kept under guard in Herod's palace. Praise be the Lord. That's the end of chapter 32. There's so much going on, right? Like the end of chapter 23. There's so much going on here. Like, this is definitely a good Netflix movie. I can't wait to see this on Chosen and watch this in action, because this is legit a movie. But it was real. And it's just, I don't know. Yesterday I was a little depressed reading chapter 22 and 23, because it's just so messed up how people will attack you and seek to kill you and destroy you just because they have different ideas than you. Just because they think something is right and you think something is different, then all of a sudden they want to plan to kill you. And now even here, they are literally plotting his death and vowing not to eat until he is dead. So I don't know about you, but after about 2 or 3 days of this, they're probably going to be willing to do anything just to get some food. They're now starving, and they're like, we got to kill this guy. We decided that we're not going to eat. So come on, y'all. We hungry. Let's hurry up and get this done. Right. She blogs about everything, says that's why we have to stay prayed up. Exactly. If God be for us, who can be against us? And shout out to all of you all that are reading with me and listening in. I really appreciate you all. And thanks for even following along with the Bible study. It's been such a blessing, and I hope that you all have enjoyed it too. This one, I think we got to remember the character of people as we listen to this and read this book. And just recognizing, and you're welcome, Wanda said, appreciate you, of course. I feel like what has happened to Paul can happen to any of us. And sometimes we can forget that these kind of things can come against us. And if something comes up where somebody's being evil or plotting against us or doing something wrong towards us, we can't all of a sudden imagine that. It can't catch us off guard. Now that we've read this book in the Bible, we're prepared. It's not something we hope for. It's not something that we want to happen. But I feel like now we can kind of suit ourselves up and say, look, if something comes against me, first of all, I know that it's part of human nature. I've seen this before. I saw it happen with Paul in the book of Acts. So you doing this is not a surprise. But then also we can try to look at Paul and see how he's handling this. And we can be grateful that God came even in the midst of this. It said the Lord stood by Paul and said, have courage. Let's look back at what he said. Verse 11, the following night the Lord stood by him and said, have courage. And then he tells him he's going to have to keep going. You're not going to die here. Basically what Jesus says is, you're in Jerusalem right now, but you're not going to die here. It's not over yet. We got to take you you're going to talk to the Romans too. So don't lose courage now and think that this is it. You know that you're about to die. You've already told them that the end is coming, but this is not it. Have courage. And so some of us need to hear that same thing. When somebody comes against us, when some plots are happening, I've had stuff happen in work situations, in entrepreneurship. It's just stuff that just really. But we've just got to know that God is still with us and is telling us to have courage. In Jesus' name. Right. I'm looking at the comments. She vlogs about everything, says that's a word. What they said, or what he said, was keep going. And just to know that God was with him, I think that's comforting too. Like, he legit just got beat up. They were about to they stretched him out and were about to beat him with lashes and scourge him. And then he tells them, you all are breaking the law right now. You're not even supposed to do this. I'm a Roman citizen. Then he has to prove himself. And I feel like that too can be, like that, honestly, sometimes that can be more disappointing than anything else when you have to kind of prove yourself. And Paul keeps having to prove himself, like, I'm a Roman citizen. Like, I grew up like you all. I was a Jew. I'm a Pharisee. I'm the Pharisees of Pharisees. I'm the son of a Pharisee. He's trying to, like, prove himself. And how many times does that happen too? Like, people are plotting against you, saying evil things, and now you got to try to prove yourself and, like, explain who you are and try to get them to understand. Like, that could be tough in itself and just draining. So my encouragement to you all is what Jesus said. Have courage. Keep going. And isn't that nice too? God sees you. He is with you. Even in whatever's going on, he is with you. And you can do this, y'all. Love y'all. And we're almost there. We're at chapter 24, and we got to see what happens. Paul is going to the next place. And we got to see how this ends. All right. Talk to you later. Bye-bye. Right. We serve a God who sees all. Amen. All right. Bye, everybody. Thank you for joining in and commenting. Y'all can mark done underneath this when you finish.